Hey, you guys. So, welcome back. I got my new podcast mug, Strong as a Mother. I just like to have a little bit of tea for each one of these chats. Are you drinking it? Is it coffee?
Yes, my nitro cold brew with sweet cream.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
I had my 1 cup of coffee earlier this morning, and we were going to do like a, Jeb was supposed to give her back to me, but like something changed with his schedule. And then I was like, well, I can go ahead and take her. He's like, no, why don't you finish your coffee and then you can take her? And I was like, oh, thank you. Seriously.
Right?
Thank you. Just to be able to like sit there and fully enjoy that.
Yes.
Yes. And like not in a rush and not while it's cold. But
Yes.
Okay, so today's guest is Alexandra Klein. She has 3 daughters, and we actually met at the BirthFit Coaches Seminar in San Francisco in was it 2018?
I think so. I think January of 2018, somewhere
I
around
think
there.
so, yeah. And at the time we both each owned a CrossFit gym.
Yep.
And you had a little one with you, and life looked a lot different. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us when you joined street parking, a little bit about your girls and yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so like you said, I owned a CrossFit gym, so I was a coach there from January, I believe, of 2012. Started running the gym and was a co-owner in 2015, I believe. And then in early 2018 was when we closed the gym down. And so I had been a part of the CrossFit community back from, when garage gyms were where it started, and you had the junkyard gyms, and that just was what it was. And we had kind of evolved to what mainstream CrossFit had become. But when we closed down, I was really at a loss. There was a local CrossFit gym here in town, and I tried it out, and just with my little ones, it was not working. I was used to being able to have my kids run all over the gym behind me and, set up their workout area right next to mine. And that wasn't quite how this gym ran things. And so it was just very different and hard to adjust. So I have followed Miranda for years on Instagram. When I got my level 1, she was the one who asked me what size shirt I wanted, and so I nerded out about that hardcore. And I was
that's so awesome.
Moment in my life. And so once I was looking for a new home, I was like, okay, well, she's doing this online thing, I'll check it out. Tried it out, and it just worked out so much better, and my girls could be a part of it. And so that was in May of 2018. And shortly thereafter, we got pregnant on vacation. So if you're not trying to get pregnant, do not go on vacation and leave the kids behind. Because you have more time to do things. And so she's our best souvenir ever.
Where were you on vacation?
Mammoth Lake. And it was actually our 5-year wedding anniversary. And we were there for a friend's wedding. And there was
lots of
for.
love in the air. Yeah.
Yes. And so then I was able to do street parking all through my 3rd pregnancy. And I think one of the biggest things too is I remember on a couple of posting, Christine Young reach out about being a former CrossFit owner and how she was getting by with things, and about some of the feelings that she had with closing it down and grieving that loss a little bit. And I remember there being a ton of people that responded to that, former gym owners. And so it was okay, these are my people. They can understand the family side, the gym ownership side, and all the transitions. And so it was, after that, that was it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that Jeb and I went through that a little bit also, just the sense of saying goodbye to our family at the gym, and like, you know, God, we invested our whole life into that place.
I mean, you miss holidays and a lot of things with family because you have your gym stuff.
Yep.
And so like they are your family, and then to close that chapter it's weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. But street parking for sure was such an awesome thing to transition to. It's perfect, you know, for that. A perfect new family to dive into, and other people that care about, you know, obviously the fitness, but like the community just as much as we did. But now we don't have to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, now we don't have to be there, you know, like in the middle of the night if the roof is leaking or something.
A leak, yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently we both went through some roof leaks, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was, you know, once we got to the point too where I started seeing Miranda paying more attention and then going to the birth fit class, I remember telling my friends, because after we had gone through the birth fit seminar, that was on my mind constantly. I don't care if you were a former NFL player or if you are a mom, like we're all doing progressions, we're all stretching out, we're all doing the things. And so once I saw that being added into the street parking modules and into just kind of the frame of mind, and now like with the more than nothing, it was just all of these pieces were aligning where it was like, what else could you ask for?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so tell me, how old are your girls? What are their names?
Oh,
and
my babies.
Yeah.
So Adriana, she just turned 5 on November 29th. Addison will be 3 on December 29th. And then our baby girl was born on July 13th. So they are 2 years and 1 month apart, and then 2 years and 6 months apart.
Wow. So, and the littlest one, she's Austyn?
Yes, Austyn. Yeah, so we have Adriana, Addison, and Austyn. So you can imagine when anyone is in trouble or doing things they're not supposed to, we go through all the names, and it's, you know which one I'm talking to, come over here.
Yeah, totally. And you live in California, like Northern California?
Yeah, so I live in Santa Maria, so we're right in between San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara. Okay.
And your husband, he's a firefighter?
Yep, he's the firefighter for Santa Monica Fire Department. He used to work up in Orchid, which is a really small town nearby, and for an Air Force base, and then he transferred out to Santa Monica like months before we found out we were pregnant with our first daughter. So he's been down there now for almost 6 years.
Wow. So this must have been the first like summer fire season, I guess. I don't know if that's a thing that they call it, that you were like stay at home full time, 3 kids. How was that for you?
So when my husband transferred from the Air Force department that he was with to Santa Monica isn't a forestry based department. And they don't send out a ton of what we would call strike teams or groups of departments or groups of engines out to fires. A whole lot. They don't normally get that ticket. And so this year, of course, with a 4-month-old baby and a 3-year-old and 5-year-old at home, he got the ticket. And so he calls and he says, "Hey, babe, I think we're going to send a crew out. Is it okay with you if I go?" And I know that fire is, this wall back here is all of his fire photography and stuff. This is our office. And so I knew he hasn't been in years. They don't get an offer very often when he's on duty. So I told him, just go for it. Well, that turned into them working on the Tick fire, which was nearby. Mm-hmm. Then they got sent up to the Kincaid fire in Sonoma County. And then on their way back home, he got assigned to the Maria fire. So he ended up being gone for 15 days straight. And that's nothing compared to like our military wives or military spouses, that are part of street parking that do months on end. But it definitely was this sense of like no control, especially because we didn't know he finished up at one fire and we're like, okay, he's going to come home in the next few days. And then he went on another one and then another one. So it was like, I finally got in my mind, after actually listening to one of our podcasts, I got in my mind that like, it is what it is. He's either coming home in 2 days or in like 20 days. And I just have to figure it out. So got my stuff together, started getting some workouts back in the morning, started figuring out one thing that had to be done every day. And then like the rest, just survive.
Wow.
But so yeah, it was our first fire season that we've gone through where he's actually been assigned. And realistically, it's the first fire where he's been gone that long since we were engaged.
Wow.
So,
man.
So we went for the full Monty with 3 kids.
Yeah. You crushed it though. You did it.
Thank you. It was, again, the community that we have here is crazy because I typically post on, my Instagram. I keep my stories fairly current and engage with a lot of our ladies on there. And there are a couple of women specifically that like checked on me every couple days. Hey, what's going on? How are you doing? I don't know how you're doing it. This is what I do when he's gone for a long time or what have you. And it was just so nice to have that refreshing support, even though like one of the gals, Kayla Murray, she's out in Japan. Like I've never even met her. And we had some of the most intense conversations and like, it's out of this world.
Yeah. She's coming on the podcast
Awesome.
soon. Yeah.
Yay.
I'm so pumped to hear her story. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's so funny. I've asked like each of the women, the role that street parking plays in motherhood for them. And everyone talks about the community and the Facebook group and being able to like reach out and not feel alone. And for me, it was the same, I haven't fortunately had to be alone in that way, but like just, it's tough. And like I consider you guys my friends and you guys have helped so much, especially in those first few weeks that it was like really, really intense. It's pretty amazing what we have in this community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that really basically leads me into the whole purpose of this podcast. And really the idea is just we get to know each other a little bit better. And, you have always like contributed a lot to the Facebook group and are jumping in and shouting out your experience and advice and all that kind of stuff, or just support and positivity. And so it's kind of nice to put a story to the name or the Instagram handle or whatever. And so wherever you want to start, if you want to go through the 3 of them, but in particular, I'd love to save a little bit more time for this last birth because I know it was really special for you.
Well, Austyn's birth was like, I don't know, I feel like if everyone wanted a birth like I had, if everyone could have the experience I had with Austyn and with I kept calling him my dream team, I would love that. Our world, like the entire world would just be so different if every woman could feel the way I felt before, during, and after. And if they could just be so enriched in their own process. So Austyn's story really wouldn't have happened without the first 2, because I feel like I've said this a few times to different moms who have had cesareans that were unwanted cesareans and perhaps not completely medically necessary. I get that some people have the cesareans and they're totally fine with it and they know it's necessary for their process, or quite frankly, the idea of labor and a vaginal delivery just isn't their jam. Like, I get that. I totally respect that. For me, I want some essential oils. I want some hippy dippiness, and I want to feel all the feels as I go through the process. And so the cesarean really rocked my world in a negative way. My firstborn, Adriana, I was having really bad swelling and like crazy blood pressure. My blood pressure is normally like legit, and it was through the roof. And so I told my husband I refused to go to the hospital on Thanksgiving. I wanted Thanksgiving dinner and pie. So we stayed home for that. And then the morning after, we had to go to the hospital to be induced. And I was 39 weeks and I believe 3 days. And we went in, they gave me Cervadil, which if anyone is getting ready to be induced with Cervadil, it's this super itty bitty little tampon-like thing that they stick way in there, and it started my labor, fortunately. So that was the only induction method that I needed to go through with her. I did use some sort of pain management clicker, and ended up, laboring on my back. I didn't get out of the bed the entire time. Looking back in pictures, there were way too many hands down there delivering my kid that were not mine, or my husband's. But she was born healthy. She was 8 pounds, 8 ounces, 21 inches long. I had a 2-degree tear, a 2nd-degree tear, had some stitches, and that was it. So in hindsight, after her birth, I was like, yeah, it's great. Everything's fine. Everything was good. Come along to my second baby, Addison, and she was breech at 35 weeks. The doctor said not to worry about it. It was fine. We still had time. So being that I still own the gym, I would flip over some boxes and I would do my inversions. I knew nothing about spinning babies at that time, but I was like, okay, if we need the baby to flip, I needed to get her out of here and do a little flip over.
Oh, wow.
And I tried finding an acupuncturist who could help. And unfortunately, the acupuncturist in our area at that time wouldn't treat me because they hadn't treated me prior to like this point of my pregnancy. I was like, okay, can't do that. I already was seeing a Webster certified chiro. So that was already in the books. I tried doing some massage and some hot compress and cold compress on the belly, and like nothing was working. So, so we went into a doctor's appointment at 38 weeks, and the doctor said, hey, she's still breech. She probably doesn't have room. We could try an ECV, but we're going to go ahead and schedule your cesarean for January 11th. This was on December 29th. So I was like, okay, we've got time, but in the back of my mind, just stressed to the max. Asked the doctor about the ECV, and he immediately is very uncomfortable and almost a little bit like a lack of confidence came off, and a lot of doubt. They could dislocate their shoulder, they could have a clavicle, this, that, the other, and it was just like, okay, so what's the benefit of doing this? I remember asking him, and he was like, well, if she flips, you can have a vaginal delivery. So can you explain
a little bit more about what it is, like what the process is?
I've actually seen, because part of this last birth lit this fire inside of me to realize that ECVs are totally manageable if you have a practitioner who knows what they're doing and who is confident in doing it. My doctor obviously was not comfortable doing it, and he did not necessarily want to do it. That's why the risks outweighed the benefits so much in his conversation with me. The way this works is, see what we can do here. Baby would be here. And so what happens is, if this is baby's head should be this way. What they're going to do is they're slowly going to massage baby. So they would be massaging head, massaging bottom, and flipping, essentially. Then baby could descend into birth canal. Things progress as normal. The issue is, depending on how baby is stuck or why baby is stuck in a breech position, there could be like cord wrapping issues. It could be a short cord. Your hips, if they're not symmetrical, or if your pelvis is tucked or anything else, then there really isn't room for it. So you're almost trying to flip baby into an even tighter space. And so it can be really uncomfortable for mom. It can be uncomfortable for baby. There are risks. Baby's shoulder could dislocate. Baby's clavicle, could have some sort of strain to it. And I forget the stats now because it's, kind of out of sight, out of mind for me at this point. But I remember looking back at it, and it wasn't nearly as risky as things were being led to me, or passed on to me. And so when we left that conversation or that consultation with my doctor, I remember my husband, especially being in the medical world, he works with firefighter paramedics, he works with hospital staff. That's his jam. Like, we're in a hospital, we trust them 100%. They know everything. Both of us were just not on board with doing the ECV at that point. And again, I was stressed out, and my husband was just like, you know what, babe, like, let's not think about it today. Our one daughter was in daycare for the day so that we could just have like a date day. He was like, let's just go out to lunch. Let's walk around a little bit. Let's just enjoy our time, and then we'll look at it tomorrow. We'll research all the things tomorrow. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. So we go home, we relax. I go coach a class at the gym. We actually go to a friend's birthday party for her son that day, drop off some birthday gifts, like hold her little 2-week-old baby. And then we go home. And as my husband's cooking dinner with our oldest, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm having contractions. Wow. 38 weeks. And so I'm like, no, it's just stress. Like, let me get up, drink some more water. Let me just walk around. And it was definitely contractions. And they were long, and they were in very short intervals. And so then I'm like, I still haven't said anything to him. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, let me just start timing this and see what's going on. And he's supposed to go to work the next day. And so finally we sit down to eat, and I can't hide that I'm having contractions anymore as I'm trying to eat dinner. And he's like, babe, what's going on? And I said, I've been having contractions, and here's what they look like. And it's like 2 hours of contraction patterns. And I said, if this is the real deal, like, you can't go to work tomorrow. What are we going to do with our baby? Like, our 2-year-old at the time, what are we going to do with her? We hadn't made any plans yet. And so my best friend, Gabby, was in visiting from Wyoming at the time. And she was about 20 minutes away. So I called her, and I was like, hey, dude, I'm having contractions. Can you come take me to the hospital? Because we don't know what to do with our kid. Andy needs to stay with her. So she took me down. We got there at about 8 o'clock, and my daughter was born at 10:20 that night.
Oh, my gosh.
So, again, I did no research that day. I had a vaginal delivery with my first. I didn't do any new birthing classes or any prep work with the second pregnancy, because it was like, I've already done this. It's fine. I'll just do it again. And so I remember this extreme panic as I sat in the triage room at the hospital. They had said, yes, I was dilated, which I wasn't that morning. So I knew the contractions were doing something. I think I was like a 2 or a 3, so not anything crazy yet, but we knew she's breech. We knew we're not delivering that way. And so the doctor said, yeah, I'll come on down, and we'll do the cesarean tonight. And so as I'm sitting there in that triage room, I'm just going through my phone with poor internet connection, trying to figure out, like, what does a cesarean look like? What choices do I have? And at our hospital, the cesarean rate here is at, or it was at the time, at like 32%, or something for even vaginal delivery. So or for any delivery. So I knew that they had options, but I didn't know what options they had as far as like a clear drape versus a blue drape, immediate skin to skin versus not, any of those things. And as I was sitting there with the nurse, things just started happening, right? We have to prep me, we have to get the gowns ready, we have to do all the blood vials to test for different things. So as I'm asking her questions, she really doesn't even have time to focus on what I'm needing answered.
Right.
And so that, I know in hindsight, that was a huge part of why I had so much of an issue with my postpartum recovery and with the process itself. But it was just a lot.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going in. My husband got there. I was so typical husband coming in right at the last minute and like, okay, let's do this. Here I've been sitting there for 2 hours, like, thank God my best friend was there, but it was just so much to be going through.
Yeah.
And so we get in, I'm by myself as they give you the epidural, and the anesthesiologist says, okay, you know, is there anything you want to tell me before I administer this? And he explains what he's going to do. And I'm like, dude, I like to work out and I like to walk. So if you can make sure that you do this right, like that's my biggest request. And so he, myself, and my doctor, we all just kind of chuckle. I roll over and he administers the epidural and roll me back over. And my doctor was very sweet through this process and was like rubbing me on the shoulder. It's going to be okay. You're fine. Lays me down. Andy comes in, and I just remember it being a very cold environment. We'd go through the process, and I don't want to get into too much of my issue with it because I don't want to like trigger or freak anyone out. You know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't a good process for me. There was a lot where I just felt lonely throughout it, even though my husband was right there with me. I went from my delivery with Audrey. My husband helped pull her out or helped guide her out and put her on my chest directly. With my cesarean, it took 14 minutes for me to touch my daughter's cheek. And it was 43 minutes after her birth that I got to hold her for the first time. And when the nurse brought her to me to hold her, I got in trouble because I immediately ripped my gown off and started getting my baby naked to put her on me skin to skin. And the nurse was like, you can't do that. You're in recovery and she needs to stay dressed. And I just remember looking at her like as I was ripping her stuff off and being like, I'm mommy. I will tell you what's allowed. Give me my baby. And so
was there like some special circumstances that led to that, or was it just that was the protocol for that hospital in particular?
That was the protocol for that hospital. Yeah.
Okay.
The hospital here is not like, so when I was pregnant the third time around, and people are, you know, very well-meaning but very fear-based worries that they would send out to me. Oh, you know, you have a high risk of uterine rupture, because this one was a VBAC. My third one was a VBAC. You have a high risk of uterine rupture. You need to be at the hospital in case you hemorrhage. What if you need another cesarean? You need to be there. You need to be there. And so I did my research. I called up the hospital, and I actually spoke to the nursing manager at our hospital, and I asked, you know, if we scheduled a cesarean, do you have a gentle cesarean process, or do you have like a mom and baby friendly just cesarean? And her literal question was, what is a gentle cesarean? I've never heard of that.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, so you are the nurse manager. Like, it's only you and one other nurse manager that help run the floor. So if you don't know what it is, obviously something's lacking. And so I walked through with her, okay, well, a gentle cesarean would look like this. And the only thing that they had available, if it was non-emergent, was a clear drape, which in my mind, if you're going in and it's not an emergency C-section, which mine was not, I feel like that probably should have been a question right from the get-go for mom. Hey, you know, do you want a clear drape so you can see everything, or do you want the traditional blue drape or whatever? But that wasn't the case. And then the other thing was, if the anesthesiologist approves it, you can have immediate skin to skin.
Wow.
And that was kind of my response too. You know, there's just, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit more about what a gentle cesarean is?
Yeah, so there's a few different takes on gentle cesareans. It can get as, and I use the phrase hippy dippy because I don't even know what else to put on it, but it can get as hippy dippy as you want, being that, like, one of my friends in San Luis Obispo County, she had a cesarean where they actually, so, you know, they make all the incisions through the skin, through the fatty tissue, through the muscle, but then once you get to the uterus, he actually, like, poked a hole in the uterus and did a small tear, and then allowed the uterus to kind of rip on its own open, which then allows for a more natural healing process later. If you think about like falling onto something and scraping your arm versus cutting your arm, and how your skin recovers from that, same kind of thought processes there, that like your body can just heal a little bit differently. Sometimes it's the incision is actually made in the uterus, and then baby is allowed to essentially crawl out or be birthed out of that incision site. And so a lot of that is based on, doctor preferences, hospital preferences, things like that. And of course, mom and dad, if they have many options made available to them. But then from there, it's also immediate skin-to-skin contact, allowing mom to, some hospitals will allow mom to wear specialty gloves to help pull baby out of the incision site and put baby onto her chest, and things like that. And so a lot of it comes down to what people are comfortable with. My sister and I joke about this a lot because she is also doing street parking now, and she has 3 kids. Each of our kids are 6 weeks apart from each other. Yeah. And she had a cesarean, multiple cesareans, and she was there for my first birth, and she's like, I wouldn't, like, no, that is not my jam. I don't wanna. Yeah. And so when I was finding this information about the gentle cesareans, and I'm like, yeah, it's so cool. You could like get these gloves and you can help pull the baby onto your skin. And she just looks at me like, you have an issue. Like, that is not okay. I don't want to.
That's the whole point of like why I don't want to.
Yes.
Birth it vaginally.
Yeah. And so, to each their own. And again,
Right.
It's every mom's preference, but I just really, in hindsight, didn't care for the fact that I wasn't given like any options to help make my process easier. And so the gentle cesarean, again, it gives you alternate ways for the baby to actually be born. Immediate skin to skin, and then the baby staying with mom while mom is being sutured. There's a lot of research out there that will express the importance of skin to skin on breastfeeding, not just the immediate latch, but long-term breastfeeding, and how much that first hour matters to both mom and baby. And then also just on stability. Baby stability and mom stability depend on that connection. For 10 months, we're working to grow these little babies, and the thought that as soon as they come out that they're going to be okay in an incubator that keeps them warm. Like that's not the same. They need my heartbeat. They need my skin. The ability of mom's skin to keep baby's temperature regulated is a huge benefit to baby.
Yeah.
And so all of those things are just lacking, or were lacking, in my process. And then in hindsight too, my middle child, Addison, she was angry. She was not ready. I know that with my 3rd pregnancy, I ended up having prodromal labor. And so I labored like hardcore 3 days before she was born. And so now I wonder too, if that's all that was. If that first night, the night that she ended up being born, was just prodromal labor, and I might have gone through that 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah. Wow.
And so her first night, she was angry. She didn't want to latch. She didn't want to be cuddled. She didn't want a pacifier. Like, she wasn't ready. And so it's one of those things that, it is what it is now, but it fired me up when I found out I was pregnant the 3rd time.
I wonder if it would be safe to say also that, like, in some cases, yes, baby needs the skin to skin has the benefits for a baby, but like, I think mom needs baby
Absolutely.
just as much,
Absolutely.
Like,
I remember having the shakes with my pregnancy, after delivering Addison. I remember having the shakes bad. And I remember like, it was like cold shivers, and like I couldn't contain it. And the entire time while they're suturing me up. And then I just kind of blacked out, like, not health or like for any medical reasons blacked out, but like I was so in a bad headspace and not happy with how things were at that time, that like I don't remember anything after touching her skin until I got into recovery. Wow. And so I remember once I got her on me, it was just this like immediate calming. And even just thinking about it, I can put myself right back there, and it's just this like, like I remember looking at that lady telling me no, and being like, dude, this is us.
Yeah.
And just, I have a picture of us, with me with my little nasal tube or whatever, and her with her beanie on, and she's on my chest. And it was like, that was the first moment of calm I remember having after that delivery. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think it is vital for mom. And I think you've probably seen in our street parking mom group too, that there have been a lot of women who have had cesareans that didn't go the way they had hoped, or that they had, a vaginal, they were intending for a vaginal delivery, and then things went awry and they ended up going with a cesarean. And in the end, mom is kind of tail spinning out of it. And I think that that's the unfortunate part of the cesarean deliveries that isn't really researched enough. And the long-term effects that has on a mom is not okay. Again, to each their own. And for the moms who can tough it through those cesareans, because that recovery is no joke, and who are mentally and emotionally okay after a cesarean, great. But for the moms that are not, something more needs to be done. I don't know what that looks like, but
I mean, I think that it starts with just learning what the options are, like just learning. No one tells you at any point, hey, you should call your hospital and find out what their cesareans actually look like. Like, how do they go? What do they do? Or, hey, you should ask if if you're interested in this gentle option, you should ask if it's an option, because it might not be, you know?
And it might not be an option at the one you're looking at, but at the hospital 10 minutes down the road, it might be an option.
Exactly.
Because we have hospitals in either direction. So who knows? That could have been an option if I went south instead of north,
Exactly. And, and just like, we don't get a booklet. Like, you don't get pregnant and someone hands you a booklet and says like, okay, these are all the things that you need to ask all the people. You're trying to handle just being pregnant and
exactly. Just managing that first trimester.
And then preparing for a baby. And at least I didn't think, for a long time, I didn't think that I needed to question my OB or my midwife even. Like, I didn't know. I just assumed that they all had my best interest in mind. And I think that they do. But it's also our responsibility to just learn what all the options are. If you
absolutely
want to, if you want to know,
absolutely,
that's what I would recommend. And I think I know plenty of women that intentionally choose cesarean, like they want nothing to do with the vaginal birth, and that is awesome. And even then, like, just knowing, hey, you have some options. This is what it's going to look like. And then if you are planning for vaginal birth, to know what is plan B, C, D, and E going to look like also.
Absolutely. I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, as long as you're educated about what you're doing, then that is it. You can do your home birth, you can do the birthing center, you can do the hospital, you can have a midwife, you can have a doula, you can have an OB, you could do a free birth. Like, that's not my journey. That would scare me, and my husband would not be on board with that. But if that's where you're at, then that's where you're at. The whole thing is that you have to be educated. You can't put that responsibility on anyone else entirely, because then, when things don't go according to your hopes, your plans, your whatever, ultimately you're the only one who lays with that burden, no one else. So that kind of, that lack of education, lack of responsibility on my part with my second birth, was definitely not allowed to happen again when I found out I was pregnant with Austyn. So again, she was our vacation baby. I went to see actually my best friend who was there for my second birth. I flew out to see her in Utah, and I distinctly remember packing like a ton of tampons, because I was like, I've got all these tampons in here. I don't want to buy more when I get to Utah. Should be starting my period any day. Well, after the 6-day visit with her, I got back home and all the tampons were still in my suitcase. And I was like, that's not good. And so I took a test the day I got back, and we found out I was in fact pregnant. After I had, of course, teased my sister that she was pregnant with her third and I wasn't pregnant. So but as soon as I found out I was pregnant, we knew I was about 5 or 6 weeks along. because, you know, firefighter schedule also makes it very easy to track when you could have conceived. And so we made an appointment with the same OB that delivered our first two girls. And he confirmed I was, you know, somewhere right around 5-6 weeks along. My due date was, I believe, July 7th, maybe 4th of July. Maybe it was 4th of July, somewhere in there. And in our very first meeting, he made a comment that I would be a great candidate for a VBAC because I've already delivered one vaginally. We only delivered the second one via C-section because she was breech. And he says, yeah, and hopefully by the time you're ready to deliver, the hospital will be more on board with VBACs. And as soon as he said that to me, I was like, pardon my language, but F this hospital. Like, you will not make me go through that again. Yeah. So the next week I made an appointment with my acupuncturist. So I'm like, yeah, I'm pregnant. I need to have acupuncture. And she says, okay, well, how far along are you? And I was like, 7 weeks. And she's like, okay. I normally don't start treating women for pregnancy until later, but that's fine. You know, we can do some relaxation and just to make sure that your body is like calm and can help carry this baby. So that's what we focused on for a little while, and got back to the chiropractor, made sure that that was staying regular. And then I started looking around at midwives. And I remember not quite understanding the difference between like a midwife and a doula, or who would actually need to be there for me to deliver elsewhere. I knew there were not birthing, birthing centers, not studio. It's a birthing center. Mom brain. I remember realizing that there weren't any birthing centers here in town, so I would have to travel at least 45 minutes away if that's what I wanted to do. And having that in my mind was like, oh man, I don't know about that. Like, that sounds intense. And so I just started the process, and I started talking to my husband about it. I already knew where my mind was with it, but I also knew if my husband wasn't on board with it, it wasn't going to happen because I needed him to be able to support me. And if he's stressed out and worried about my safety, he's not going to be able to support me. So we met with one midwife, and it just didn't quite click. The vibes just weren't there. I don't know. It just wasn't right. And so I was like, okay, well, that's it. That was like the only one I could find on one of my midnight searches on Yelp or whatever I was using. And so I said, okay, you know, we're just going to have to go with the hospital. We did a few more appointments and everything was good. I was gaining less weight this time around. I'm a big gainer. I gained 65 with my first, 60 with my second, and 50 with my third. I'm 5'8" and every time I got pregnant, 174. So I end up in the 220s, 230s. I, you know, make sure I feed my husband extra so he stays a little heavier than me. But, you know, so as we were going through the appointments with my OB and all the perinatal scans, right? Everything looked great. And they would make comments about, oh my gosh, you have like so much amniotic fluid in here. It looks great. Not an oversupply, but like, it looks great. Oh, her cord looks great. Oh, all of our heart, you know, all of the ventricles of our heart are pumping. It looks great. And so I'm sitting there just dumbfounded at how can everything look so good? But in the end, the hospital could say that because I had a cesarean, I have to have another. And it just made me so angry. So I remember we were a week before, so I was 18 weeks. No, it was a week before my perinatal scan again. And I met with a midwife. And we were sitting there, and as soon as I met her, I liked her. There was something about her demeanor. She was just calm. But she was intense at the same time. Like, you knew she would go to bat. She was going to make sure whatever I needed, I had. And then in come her student midwives. So she had 2 student midwives. And then at later appointments, I got to meet her midwife friend, bestie, co-worker that helps oversee births when they have a lot in one time. You know, they'll kind of partner up and support each other. Or in my case, my midwife that I had hired, she always goes on her family vacation for 4th of July. And so, given our due date, she was like, you know, if I should be gone, I want you to be comfortable with my partner. And then that way, either one of us will show up with the student midwives. So great. As we sat in that meeting, that was the first time that I really got to sit with my delivery from our second, and I just sobbed. That was when we figured out that it was 14 minutes from delivery when I touched her and 43 minutes until I held her. And I was sobbing, but I was angry. I was just so angry that I missed out on that time with her. And as we continued talking, the midwives were like, you will do this. Like, you will. You've already done this before. You have the fire behind you from this second birth to make sure that you blaze your way through this. Like, everything looks good. Let's do it. So we went to the 19-week scan. Everything again checked out and looked great. The nurse, or I guess it would be the radiology tech who does the scan, right? She was doing the scan and she's like, wow, your baby's really big. And so I'm like, oh, okay. What does that mean? And she's like, oh, she's measuring 2 weeks ahead. And so I'm like, okay, cool. That's great. And she's like, no, like she's measuring 2 weeks bigger. So like, she's going to be a big baby. And I'm like, no, my other 2 kids measure 5 to 9 weeks ahead. So we're good. Like, this is a small, big baby for us.
Yeah.
And so I remember telling our midwives, and they were like, oh yeah, that sounds perfect. She sounds like she's right on track with your other kids. Like, your vitals are all good and healthy. We had no protein in the urine or anything else that was concerning. So we kept up with our midwife care at the house, which was phenomenal. Like, make an appointment, they come to my house with all of their tools, and I got to lay on my couch while they did their assessments, and my girls got to be a part of it, and the midwives were awesome. The 2 main midwives, they each have kids, so they were great with my girls of like, oh, here, use the fetoscope to hear the baby's heartbeat, or here's how we're going to check mommy's blood pressure. And it just was really a family experience instead of like a medical procedure. And so we kept up with that process, and I started doing the Mama Natural Birth class online. And I have been a huge advocate for this class since doing it, because had I learned all of this stuff the first time around, I think the first and second births would have been completely different. There was just more information given to me that then made me dig in and do my own research. Right. For like our local hospital, or, okay, they're saying that I only have a 0.4% chance of uterine rupture, but what does that, like, who says that? What does that really mean? And that was the truth. I had a 99.6% chance of not having a uterine rupture. Yeah. But uterine rupture was everyone's biggest fear with the idea of me having a home birth. And so it was like, as soon as I could flip that and tell people, like, no, the 2018 stats say 99.6% chance I will not have a uterine rupture, people just kind of sat back on their heels. And when I could see that change in other people's demeanor, it made me a little bit more confident in what I was doing too. Because like, I knew all the things, but when you can have a conversation with someone who is so up in arms about what you're going to do, out of love, out of care, out of support. It wasn't people just trying to be like, no, you're dumb, don't do it. It was, right. I love you. I want you to be alive after you deliver this baby. I want the baby to be alive. You know, when I could give them that information and get them to calm down a little bit, it was very helpful. And it was just one of those things where it was like, I started removing the fear. The more information I got from my midwives, the more information I got from the class, and then later the work that I was doing with therapy made it to where I wasn't worried about any of it. I knew what the process was going to look like. I knew what my choices were. I knew what I could do to make things better, to make sure baby was positioned optimally, to make sure that I wasn't having back labor pains, like all of the things. And so it ended up just being this really empowering birth. I hired a doula who, she came along to a few of the midwife appointments to kind of touch her bases with them. And she had worked with them before, because our cesarean rate is so high in Santa Maria. We also have a lot of home VBACs going on right now. I was actually one of like 5 in Santa Maria within like a 6-week period, that our midwives were working on. So, yeah, our team was they were awesome. And in the end, I remember, so my labor started at like 6 a.m. The morning she was born, and labored all day. She was born at 9:17 p.m. So we were about 13 hours of labor, but it was all at home. I labored for a little while my kids were asleep. I made breakfast and danced in my kitchen while my mom was making breakfast for my kids. So we were dancing probably to like Moana or Frozen or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember dancing around and then stopping for contractions as needed. We walked to the park. We have a park like, I don't know, maybe 8-9 houses down from us. We walked to the park with the kids and the stroller, and I stopped. I'd say every like 2 to 3 houses I stopped for a contraction, and it was inevitable. That's one house that these poor like college age kids were moving into this house. I stopped in front and like full sobbing, like bent over on my stroller, contractions. And this guy comes walking out and he's like, "Are you okay? Do you need something?" I'm like, "No, I'm just trying to get the baby out. Like, it's fine.
Having a baby over here, guys."
Yeah, don't worry about it. Keep unpacking that kitchen box. Like, and I just remember it being like, it was such a different experience because I was laughing. I had sunshine on my skin. Like, we were walking that morning. That morning we had gone for a walk, and I figured out that one of my neighbors has a rooster. But someone in our neighborhood has a rooster. Like,
Yeah.
And so me and my doula were laughing about that as we're walking around. We come back home, the girls go down for nap time. We kind of move on with the rest of our day. And I started laboring in my shower. So I took a shower. My husband was in there doing the like sacral pressure on my lower back.
Mm-hmm.
Just letting the water kind of hit me. I took the yoga ball, or that big, I don't know, the big ball, into my walk-in closet. And I remember just laying on it, laboring for a little while. At one point we had my entire team in the closet with me because that was the darkest place we could find in the house. And I was telling them, like, I'm getting tired. This was probably about 1 or 2 o'clock. I'm telling them, like, I'm getting tired. We need to do something to make this progress. Like, this has to happen today. It can't be like the other day, where it all just stops. And so the team was like, okay, well, we could do some nipple stimulation with your pump. You could take a hot bath to just see if like you relaxing will allow things to progress a little bit more, or allow you to like dilate a little bit more without being so tense. We can try some black and blue cohosh, and then spinning babies. We could try some inversions or a sideline release. And so I'm like, okay, let's just try the pump and a shower. And so we did. And I remember at that point talking to my doula because the black and blue cohosh made me really nervous. The black and blue cohosh is it's like a mixture of teas, is my understanding. Teas, tinctures, things like that, herbal supplements that you can take, and it's supposed to irritate the uterus, which in theory would make you have more contractions and deliver baby. The issue that I felt, or that I had read up on, was that once you ingest it, it can't be taken out, for one. So it's not like nipple stimulation with a pump. Okay, well, if that's too intense, I can stop doing it. So it couldn't be undone, and it did raise the risk of uterine rupture. And so I was like, if that's the risk everyone has, there's no way I'm increasing this risk.
Yeah.
And so it just made me uncomfortable. So my doula and I were talking about it, and she was reminding me of my previous thoughts on it. And she just said, if you're still uncomfortable with it, you need to voice that to your midwife, or I can for you. Or if you're more comfortable with it now, that's fine. But I just wanted to remind you of what we discussed before. And I told her, I was like, no, you're right. I still don't like that idea. It makes me nervous and I don't want to be stressed out.
That's so helpful. I mean,
In the middle
so
of
simple.
labor, like,
Yeah.
yes, just to have someone there to like legitimately remind you of what your goals are and to be completely unbiased.
Yeah.
And like, it was amazing. And I felt so empowered in that position, saying like, no, you're right. I don't like that idea. It doesn't make me comfortable. I want to move forward without it at this point. We'll talk about it again later if we need to. And so a little while later, you know, we do the pump and that helps stimulate contractions. I do another shower, and that shower was just like all sorts of silly. I just remember like teasing my husband because I had him shave my armpits, and I was like, "This was the last time."
While you're in labor?
Yeah, like it was the last time. I wasn't going to shower for probably a couple of days, you know, like let's make it count.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
You probably saw the pictures on my Instagram of us like in the shower, like it was part of a video, a little montage thing that I had done afterwards. I was teasing him because he had to shave my armpits the last time because I had an IV ports in my hand just in case we needed to do anything with it. And so I couldn't use that hand. Yeah. But so we get out of there and I'm like, I just want a nap. I just want to try and rest for a little bit. So I have my husband lay down, and I couldn't lay down, but if I was standing upright and like leaning my chest on the bed, it felt really comfortable. So I had him lay there and I was like, I just want to lay here and I want you to like rub my back. And he's like, I'm not going to lay down. You're in labor. And I remember telling him like, I need you to lay down so I can lay on you and feel your touch and relax. Like, I don't care if you take a nap or if you stay awake, but this is what I need to feel comfortable. So he was like, okay. And so I lay down and I distinctly remember going in and out of sleep as I was going through these contractions. And it was just like, there's something about having your husband there and just having his hands on you to support you. Like, I don't need you to be the doctor. I don't need you to be the midwife or the doula or my mom, but I want your hands on me, supporting me. And it was just, again, that calm that he brought to the labor. So anyways, we go through that for a little while and we start stalling out again in my mind. And so the midwife again offers the black and blue cohosh or spinning babies. And so I told her, and this was like one of my favorites, because I remember looking at her and I said, I don't like the idea of the black and blue cohosh. It makes me nervous that I'm going to have a uterine rupture. Even if that's not the case in my mind, that's where I stand with it. And I remember her standing there and she's like, okay, all right. And she's kind of swaying. Let's do the sideline release. So I'm like, okay, let's go try it. And we tried it. And that was at about 8 o'clock. We did a sideline release on one side. And then she was like, okay, we have to do it on the other side. We have to be symmetrical. Okay, so I flip over, and as we're doing the sideline release on the other side, my mom is sitting in front of us on the ground, and my dad at the time, they had their motorhome, so he's outside with my kids, and he's helping with the sideline release, and my mom's sitting there, and she just starts saying, oh, wow, and she's like trying to be so positive and upbeat, but I can hear her like doing her best not to freak out. And in hindsight, she said she could literally see Austyn coming from up in my like diaphragm area and shifting down lower into my belly. She was like, it was the trippiest thing to literally see this baby moving into space, into freed up space. And so we finished there at like 8:20. I laid there for a little while. And this is when I was in transition. I definitively know that now. I remember everyone being like, okay, the bath water's ready. Let's just go in there. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to stay here for a minute. And I got up and I walked. And the first couple steps, I remember being like, oh, something just happened. And it was like, I could distinctly feel that she had dropped past my tailbone. Yeah. So I could feel the pressure, on your tailbone here. I could feel pressure here. And then all of a sudden it was like a release. And I could just feel her sitting lower. And so I'm like, okay. And again, I like the hippy dippy feel what's going on, know what's going on. So for me, it was like, yeah, we're getting there. We're almost there. She's lower. And so we go into the bathtub. I got into the tub probably about 8:50. And as soon as I sat in there, the water just felt so good. Oh, it felt so good. And my mom and husband had gone out to tell my girls goodnight. And all of a sudden I start seeing that my belly is pushing. And so I'm looking at my midwife and I'm like, where is Andy? Where's my husband?
Yeah.
And they look around and they're like, oh my God, where is he? So the doula goes running out and gets him. And I have the Ring video from our doorbell of like them all running back into the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the background, you can hear me like legit going through some stuff. And so that, all of that was occurring at 9:10, and her head was out at 9:15, and her entire body was out at 9:17. So from 8:40 being on the couch to the tub to birth was 45 minutes tops. Like it was the most just crazy experience because my body did it all. Like I couldn't change it, you know, aside from the stretches that we did to let baby have more space. Like everything else was just completely my body and her working together. And through the birth class and through just my own research, I had so much better of an understanding of the process that needed to happen. And I don't know if you remember from the birth fit class, but Lindsay Matthews, the founder, had talked about the protein that an infant, when they're in utero, that the protein is released from their lung, and that protein is what irritates the uterus and then makes labor start. And so my biggest goal was to let that happen. I did, because Addison was so angry when she was born. I'm like, her protein wasn't released. We still have that protein. And so I wanted to make sure that this time around that she came on her terms. And so I just remember like every single thing that happened throughout that labor and delivery was like, okay, check that off the box. Like that happened. So now we're going into this phase. Okay, now that's progressed. So we're going here. And it was just a really crazy experience. It was super empowering and just amazing to know that we were doing it.
That is so cool. And it's so cool that like your daughters got to witness you doing this.
Yeah.
Like owning your experience.
Yeah, they were in it. And like, I think the cool thing too is hearing them play like Mommy or House or whatever later. You know, they'll be bringing their Barbies out or their babies or who knows what they're playing baby doll with that day. But my oldest will be like, Mom, I just had my baby. I just pushed her out of my belly and I didn't even have to go to the hospital. And I'm like, the fact that you even know that that's like a thing is cool. And like, there was one point she came in while I was having contractions and I was naked, you know, we had just gotten out of the shower. And I had my husband put the towel on my back just so it was like covering my butt, and, you know, they don't need to see all the things, but, my daughter comes in and she starts rubbing my arm and she's like, Mom, you just need to relax a little bit. And all of us just start laughing. And I'm like, Adriana, I know what you're saying, but you totally said it wrong. And so it was like, they were a part of the birth and it wasn't anything scary for them. Granted, they weren't there for like the last few minutes when things got real. And I don't know how moms have done it, like the hypno babies, mommies. I don't know how they do it. I am not a quiet birther. I am not. And so I remember watching videos and there would be like women not moaning or groaning as they birth a child. And I'm like, how do you do that? Yeah. And the nurses were correct. She did end up being big. She was 9 pounds, 13 ounces. And her head was 15 inches around. But because everything just took its time and was done efficiently, I had no tearing. There was one small abrasion and that was like it. So it was by far the easiest recovery. By day 2, we were at home, so we didn't have to transfer anywhere. So that was super amazing for postpartum recovery. Like I was in my own bed, food was being brought to my room. We could drink water, watch TV, do nothing, all from my room. And so by day 2, I finally was like, not finally, I was wanting to venture out a little bit more. So we ate dinner on the back patio with my mom and the kids, and I could watch them run around. And then I was like, okay, I'm tired. I'm ready to go back to bed. So we walked back, less than 100 feet to my bedroom. And it was just this amazing start to our new life as a family of 5.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's incredible.
Yeah, it was quite the experience.
And honestly, like really just being able to like see you tell this experience, I can see it just light you up,
Yeah.
which is really, really cool. And I hope that someone else gets to see that and is like, man, whatever type of birth experience they want to have, I hope that they feel just as empowered as
I think
their
that's
choices
the biggest
as you
thing.
did.
Yeah, whatever your choices are, like as you go through this process, ideally every woman should feel like it was the biggest and best transformation in their life. And that wasn't the case the second time around, and that's what lit the fire for this time. And we had briefly talked before we got on here about therapy, and when I was going through, I did I'd say probably 10 or 11 sessions with my therapist. And what we had figured out was I had a lot of resentment towards a lot of different people because of how that recovery went. And I was an angry mom because I was really struggling with some postpartum depression and postpartum anxieties. And there was a lot that my second daughter and I missed out on in experiencing together in those first few months of her life. And had it not been for BirthFit starting to chip away at that iceberg when I went to the seminar, had it not been for that, and had it not been for working with the therapist, I honestly don't know that I ever would have gotten myself out of that rut. It would have always been a part of me. And I think that that's one of the things that Austyn also allowed me to do was change that entire narrative. We picked her name Austyn because it means majestic, and there was something so majestic about her timing and about her coming into this family, because we definitely thought we were done, that it's completely changed this entire household. And so again, like that empowered and educated mom, and then the postpartum aftermath that you can have because of that is like, it's awesome. Yeah.
I love it. Is there anything else that you want to share with the community, with anyone who might be listening?
I have a couple of new mommy friends, well, soon to be mommy friends, that this is their first time going around the pregnancy rodeo. And already there's so much flack being thrown their way. So I think if you're a first-time mom, lean on your street parking crew. Like, there are so many moms in there that have worked out through pregnancy, that have eaten well through pregnancy and not given in to every single craving, but also that have embraced the process and not been so strict and so neurotic about different things. That allows you to just enjoy the process. So like, for these friends of mine, I know the one gal in particular already knows who I'm talking about. And for any other moms, like, just know that we have your back, and that if you have questions, that we're here to answer, and that working out is good for you and your baby. Use the mama mods, because you, Miranda, and Molly have all worked, and the entire team have all worked really hard to make sure that those mods are specific to moms at whatever stage of pregnancy, or postpartum, or trying to conceive. And just lean on us. We're here, and it's a great community. So yeah, that's all I have, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If we want to find you on Instagram, follow your stories even more, what's your handle?
I believe, let me check real quick. Like, I believe it's the number 4, Mama Klein. Let's double check. Yes, 4 Mama Klein is my Instagram handle. I tend to be a little bit shy on there with adding people simply because I post so much about my kids. Yeah. But I've been having a heart-to-heart with myself about that because I also share a lot of stuff that I want to get out there to other people. So if you send me a request, I will be sure to openly accept that. And then I'm on Facebook too. Like you said, I'm on the Facebook group all the time. So feel free to add me on there if that's a better means of communication.
And I know that you do a lot of work with women in your area, the Santa Maria area.
I've backed off that a little bit just because, like you and I were saying, we don't have the gym anymore. And so this is actually my first child that I've been gymless with. And it is really nice to not have to cater my schedule to other people. So I am being completely selfish with my time and with my family's time at this point. I'm actually doing a little meetup tomorrow with some of the local moms who used to go to the gym or who I used to work out with. We're getting together at my house at like 9:30 to work out. And so occasionally I'll do little meetups like that, but I haven't done anything too crazy where I have to commit too many resources or time to. So it'll come in time. I know I'll be back on it, but right now I've backed off that a little bit.
And enjoy your time. I think we can all learn a little bit from that also. Okay, well, thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. And I'll see you on the Facebook group.
All right. Thank you for thinking of me. You guys have a good day.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye.